Sherrod Brown pins his hopes on Iowa. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jackie Borchert, Columbus Bureau Chief for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Kathy Kandinsky, State House reporter for the Columbus Dispatch, Dale Butland, Democratic strategist, and Mike Gonidakis, Republican strategist. Nothing against rural Iowa, but you generally don't go there in February unless you want to be President of the United States. After a kickoff rally near Cleveland, Sherrod Brown finds himself in rural Iowa this weekend. He says he is not yet running for president, but he sure looks like he is, as he begins what he calls his Dignity of Work listening tour to early caucus and primary states.
When work has dignity, we honor the pensions people earned. When work has dignity, everyone can afford health care and education and housing. When work has dignity, workers have power over their schedules and the economic security to start a family and to pay for daycare and college.
Dale Butland, how critical is Iowa to Sherrod Brown's hopes should he decide to run?
Absolutely critical. It's hard to see a path for Sherrod to the nomination unless he wins or does extremely well in Iowa. And that's for two reasons. Number one, the heart of his argument is that as a Midwesterner, he can win back some of those states in the Midwest that Trump won the last time around. So if he doesn't do well in Iowa, that argument is pretty well shot. But the other reason is the caucuses this year in Iowa are February 3rd of 2020. 1 month later, exactly 1 month later, March 3rd, is Super Tuesday, when 10 states, including the two biggest, California and Texas, are holding their primaries, with the result being 1,180 of the 2,026 delegates needed for the nomination will be decided on that one day. So in other words, there won't be a long, drawn-out primary season this year, and you've got to do well, particularly someone like Sherrod, who's not well known, doesn't have a lot of money, has got to do well in Iowa to have any chance at all.
He's targeting smaller cities in this trip. He's staying away from Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, going to smallish cities. Jackie, is that wise? I mean, he's going again for those Midwestern roots, populist roots.
Yeah, I mean, they're small cities, but they're strategically chosen. You know, the place where he was on Thursday night, Cresco, is a place that voted for President Obama and then voted for President Trump with the largest swing, I think, in the state by, double digits. So, these are smaller places, but the Iowa caucuses are kind of a unique animal in that, that's where you've got to make your inroads. It's not just about the big cities. You can't just rack up, votes in big cities and ignore smaller areas. You kind of have to have that support all around.
Mike, will those counties who went 20% for Barack Obama, then 20% for Donald Trump, could Sherrod Brown get them to go back for him?
They could if he was the nominee. Now, look, congratulations, Sherrod. I'm proud of him for putting his neck out there, but he's not running for president, and he knows that. He's running for vice president. This is what he wants to do. He wants to position himself because he will not move the needle enough with the states that have the most delegates in the New Yorks and the Californias. That's the Kamala Harris, who believes in getting rid of private health care and some of these extreme liberal positions. He's positioning himself for whoever wins the bloody primary, there's, 20, 30 people running for president on the Democrat side, to be the choice for VP. It's a strategic move, and I applaud him for it.
Kathy, but he sounds like he's running for president, though.
I think he's running for president until he's not running for president, and just like all these folks are. But I would have to agree with Mike on this one. I think that the most likely outcome is for him to be on a very short list for vice president.
Fundraising, $140,000 between his campaign and his PAC over the last month of 2018. Dale, is that worrisome? Is that a good number? He's coming off his re-election bid where he had raised a lot of money. It's
not a particularly good number. It is better than what John Kasich raised in that last month, but still, it's not a lot. Look, this goes back to what I was saying before. When you have the California primary coming up 1 month after Iowa, the amount of money you have to spend in California on the television markets there, some of the most expensive in the country, requires a lot of money, which is why someone who's relatively unknown, 70% of the voters in Iowa say that they don't know Sherrod Brown well enough to have an opinion. Someone relatively unknown has got to win early to get that kind of momentum going so that you can hopefully raise the kind of money, probably not enough to compete as with some of the others in California, but at least you're in the running there.
Do you have to raise that money even before Iowa to compete in two huge states a month after Iowa's caucus?
Well, look, Sherrod Brown and hardly anybody else is going to raise the amount of money you need between now and then to compete in the California primary on the same day as the Texas primary, which is on the same day as North Carolina and Virginia and Massachusetts, with all these delegates, at stake. So you've got to win early. But let me just say, I think that Sherrod, there's a lot of reasons why Sherrod should do well in Iowa, or could do well in Iowa. He's a fellow Midwesterner. He's a populist in a state that has a long tradition of populism. And his chief of staff is a native Iowan who knows the state and knows a lot of key people there.
Jackie, one issue that could cause him problems is he is a supporter, generally, at least at the start, of President Trump's tariffs, which have hurt corn and soybean farmers, a lot of whom live in Iowa and vote in the caucuses in Iowa. How does he get around that in that state?
Well, on Friday, actually, that group of farmers did, ask him, hey, what about these tariffs? And he kind of seemed to back off it a little bit and said, well, I support the tariffs initially because I think they're a useful tool in negotiating, but I don't think that they're a long-term solution. And now we're getting into long-term territory here with China.
Medicare for all, some of the candidates on the far left, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, support Medicare for all, basically a public or a single-payer healthcare system. Kathy, Sherrod Brown wants Medicare for everyone over 55. He won't go Medicare for all.
Right.
It's a more pragmatic position, less attractive to the far left of the
Less
Democratic
attractive
Party.
to the far left, but more doable. I mean, it's almost like it's a position he should be taking if he makes it to the general election. But we'll see how that goes. That's a pretty controversial position, Medicare for all, and he may actually ultimately win by having a more moderate position on that, something that's more doable.
Republicans are chopping at the bit for the Democratic nominee to be supportive of Medicare for all.
I think so. Well, I mean, look, if you just look at the policies that have come out over the past 2 weeks from Senator Harris, Cory Booker dipped his toe in the water this week. These are positions that that the average voter, I should say, in the Midwest does not support. So it actually helps us when when CNN and others continue to put Kamala on and she gives her opinion on this, that, and the other. So again, to Sherrod Brown's credit, I think he is, he's a blue dog Democrat that can't win a Democrat primary.
Well,
I was just going to say, I think that is the big question for the 2020 primary is how much is the left going to push, pull candidates to the left, or if at the end of the day, do voters decide they want someone who can win, someone who has the more moderate positions?
Well, Sherrod is hardly a blue dog Democrat. He's got pretty strong progressive cred. But let's talk about that for a minute with the Medicare for All. In my opinion, we can't, as Democrats, allow the Republicans to portray us as people who want to take away people's health insurance if they like what they have now. Most people who have health insurance through their employers work for large companies. 70% of small businesses in this country, which employ a majority of Americans, do not offer health care. But if you want it, you ought to be able to keep it. That's where I think we ought to talk about a public option. So if you like what you have now, you can keep it. But if you want to go into a Medicare for all system, you can do that, or at least Medicare for all who want it.
The problem is, how do you pay for it?
And that's what Sherrod Brown was pushing, during the Affordable Care Act discussion.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of ways to pay for it. We don't have time to go into all those now, but understand the amount of money that's spent in the private system now, it's not like you'd be just putting money on top of that, because a lot of that money we're spending now would no longer be spent and would be available for the public option.
Mike, wouldn't small businesses say, you know what, if the government had an option for health insurance, and I don't have to pay for it for my employees, wouldn't that be attractive even to a Republican businessman?
Well,
person?
Obamacare currently states, as passed by President Obama and Pelosi, that if you have under 50 employees, you don't have to offer health insurance. That's been on the books because of President Obama, mind you. And then people can go out on the exchange currently today and buy a plan.
But in a tight labor market,
solutions.
you
We
have
have
to offer-
solutions right now. People that want health care can get it on Obamacare. That's the law of the land that Democrats and Dale fight for. There it is. Go get it.
Except
I
you
think
tried to undercut it at
still there right
every
now.
single stage, which
still
means
there.
that the premiums have skyrocketed because you've tried to
They
undermine it.
skyrocketed under Obama, buddy.
Let's get to our next topic. Make no mistake, Republicans still dominate every aspect of Ohio's state government, but Democrats, at least for now, are feeling a little more loved. Of course, 26 Democrats helped elect Republican Larry Householder Speaker. And he seems to be living up to some of the promises he made to get their votes. Democrats have a slightly larger presence on subcommittees. Householder says he'll hire a nonpartisan human resources professional to investigate work-related complaints. Democratic leaders say Republicans seem more willing to work with them. Kathy Kandinsky, do Democrats really believe they can have an influence in this legislature?
I don't know what they really believe, but so far I would say they've won a lot of victories in the process category. They've got more folks on committees. They're going to have an easier time getting bills out of committee slightly, but they're still in the minority. Whether this translates to policy input is yet to be seen. And I suspect that will depend on whether the Republicans need their votes for anything. There should be a test coming pretty quickly with this transportation bill. There's talk about a gasoline tax. That is something the Republicans will need Democrat support for to pass, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm not convinced they're going to have a lot of input on policy.
Jackie, did Democrats get enough for their support for Larry Householder? I've heard grumblings that they should have gotten more. And that was from Republicans.
Yeah, I think it's arguable. I don't know the extent to the behind-the-scenes wheeling and dealing that was going on. Obviously, it was enough that Democrats felt they were getting enough that Larry Householder deserved their votes. But you know, when you really break it down, like Kathy said, they've got a couple small wins on the process side of things, but we haven't heard anything yet about guarantees about, you know, stopping certain anti-labor bills, for example. The committee chairmanships are 3 small subcommittees that are new. They're not the ones that are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And at the end of the day, you know, Republicans still have a safe majority where they could, you know, pass their priority legislation.
Is this the best Democrats can hope for, Dale, at this point?
Well, as one who was and is suspicious of making deals with Larry Householder, I hope I'm wrong and that the Democrats who made this deal with the devil turn out to be right. But I think Kathy is right on the money. It seems to me the true bipartisanship doesn't just mean getting a seat at the table or a few other concessions at the margin. It also means being willing to actually pass some Democratic legislation, or at least include some Democratic ideas in the bills that the Republicans come up with. So I think we'll soon see whether this alleged new bipartisanship is anything more than nice talk and a few more seats on committees.
Republican lawmakers have to do that, Mike. I mean, they have solid majorities. They really, in some bills, they might need a few Democratic votes, but for the most part, they're not going to need them.
They're not going to need them, whether it comes to guns, abortions, or other hot-button issues. You know, at the end of the day, though, you can call for a no-confidence vote of the Speaker at any time, and the coalition he has, you know, he's got to keep together, and he wants to keep together. I think most Republicans that didn't vote for him have risen above it. Larry Householder is one of the best politicians our state's ever seen. He convinced 26 pro-choice, anti-gun, liberal Democrats to vote for him, a white male, pro-life, strong pro-Second Amendment Republican to vote for him. So he knows what he's doing. He's going to give them just enough. You know, you give the other side just enough to get what they to be happy to take some bacon home to their district, and they'll be okay.
Is that what it is? There's some probably projects out there, you know.
Yeah.
They'll probably get some stuff like that, but you also need to watch what happens to the Republican caucus. They were split over the Speaker. Householder actually got fewer Republican votes than his opponent. So we'll have to watch and see if the caucus comes back together. If they don't, then the Democrats will have more control.
Jackie, this human resources professional, supposedly going to be more independent than the person they've had in the past. What will that mean for lawmakers?
Well, they didn't really have a person in the past. If there was a complaint, if something happened, it was reported to usually someone in the Speaker's office, legal counselor, chief administrative officer. So someone who was, you know, working closely with leadership. And I, you know, last year wrote a story about, in the wake of Me Too, what can happen in Ohio. And, you know, some out-of-state experts say you really need to have an independent person where people can turn to. And I mean, that's true for really any organization, but especially when you're working in politics, where someone would be very, you know, maybe fearful to go talk to someone who's aligned with the Speaker. And what if it's the Speaker, you know? So
how independent will this person be? I mean, all human resources people are paid by the company or the organization that's hired them. So how independent will this person be?
As independent as the Speaker wants them to be.
And the Speaker, he said today, or on Friday, reiterated that he wants this person to be a human resources professional, so someone who comes from that field. And there's a group of 4 lawmakers, Republicans and Democrats, that are working to put together what that job position is going to look like, who they're looking for before they go out and find someone. It won't be someone who's worked at the House for any length of time, probably.
And on the Senate side,
They're on their own.
no, this person would only be for the House.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. One issue that continues to divide Democrats and Republicans is the abortion issue. The anti-abortion heartbeat bill almost certainly will be back before lawmakers. There's every reason to think the Senate and the House will pass it. Now supporters say they have a governor who will sign it. This week, the state's leading anti-abortion group, Ohio Right to Life, called the bill its #1 priority, and the group had officially remained neutral on the bill. That's until Brett Kavanaugh became an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. Mike Gonidakis, you head Ohio Right to Life. Is this simple head counting on the Supreme Court that has caused your group to change its position on this?
Yeah, I've been with Ohio Right to Life for a decade now. For the past 7 years, we said it's not that we don't support the heartbeat bill. We just didn't support the current makeup of the United States Supreme Court. We can count to nine members. We can count to half of that. We didn't have that. Now we do with Kavanaugh and Gorsuch on the court, and maybe Justice Ginsburg will resign this year and we'll get another one, maybe Amy Coney Barrett. But the thing is, this will be the first pro-life bill Mike DeWine signs. He'll sign it before April, May, June. It'll be one of the first bills that comes to his desk, and then we'll start that court process. But let me contrast something here, Mike. In Ohio, and I'm going to get ridiculed here in a minute, but in Ohio, we're trying to save babies' lives that have a heartbeat. Then you look at states like New York and Virginia, who just this week, the Democrat governor signed a bill that a woman could have an abortion at her 9th month of pregnancy in New York. The Virginia governor said if a baby survives an abortion, that it's okay if the doctor then kills the baby who's laying on the bed. What's more radical? What's more? He doubled down on it this week. He did a press conference and said, I'm not walking my words back. Yeah. So at the end of the day, who's radical? Who's extreme? A group of people who want to help women and save those babies, or ones that just callously at the moment of dilation that, oh, you can still have that abortion. Our side wins, and Ohioans agree with us.
With all due respect to Mike, the heartbeat bill in Ohio is not about late-term or partial birth abortion, which in any event only accounts for 0.2% of all abortions. I don't think Mike and Right to Life are being honest about what their goal is here. Earlier this week, Mike was quoted in the Dispatch, and he said that the heartbeat bill was the next step in ending abortion on demand. But abortion on demand, that's not what Mike and Right to Life are trying to end. What they're trying to end is all abortion in Ohio for whatever reason, with no exceptions, even for rape or incest. Let me repeat that. With no exceptions for rape and incest, which means that if Mike and Right to Life get their way, a 12-year-old girl in Ohio raped by her uncle will be forced to carry that fetus to term, and any doctor who does an abortion under those circumstances becomes a criminal who can get up to a year in jail. That's not where most Ohioans are.
Would you support exceptions for rape or incest?
No, we don't accept exceptions. We don't support exceptions for rape and incest, only for life of the mother. But let's contrast that to New York and Virginia. Mike, if you did a poll of Ohioans, if they said you had two choices, New York and Virginia, abort a baby at 9 months or save a baby at the moment of heartbeat, I'll win 90-10. And Mike DeWine at 3 debates, every paper, Kathy's paper, Jackie's paper, front page of the papers, or on their website said Mike DeWine supports the heartbeat bill, and he still won by 4% in a blue wave year. So Ohioans are pro-life. People at this table might be offended by the heartbeat bill, but the rest of Ohio's not.
Let's get to the policy and the procedure of this, Jackie. Larry Householder basically said this week that he's not going to take the lead on this. He's going to let the Senate do it. Why is he going to do that?
Well, look, this bill's been around for 7 years, and every time that it's been stopped, it's fallen in the Senate, whether that's on, Tom Niehaus failing, deciding not to even bring it to a vote. And then most recently in December, they failed to override Kasich's veto by 1 vote. So, he's basically said, look, everyone knows where the House is on this, and so let's let the Senate take the lead on it. And frankly, they're going to be pretty busy in the coming months with the budget. So it makes a lot of sense that it would be coming from the other chamber.
Kathy, are Ohioans clearly pro-life? They did elect Mike DeWine a pro-life governor, but I'm not sure that was the deciding issue in the race.
They did elect. I don't think it was the deciding issue in the race. I haven't seen any recent polls, but it seems to me that the majority of Ohioans do support abortion rights for women with limitations.
Oh, well, here's an idea, though. Look, Mike says no, everyone's on his side. So here's an idea. Before Ohio politicians enact such a blatantly unconstitutional law and require taxpayers to cough up the hundreds of thousands of dollars we don't have to defend this against the legal challenges that will occur, how about we put it on the ballot in November of this year and let the voters weigh in on
That's
this?
great. Let's do a heartbeat bill on the ballot. Let's do it.
Are you for that?
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
absolutely.
Because
we'll win. Because we'll win.
Let's see. Let's see.
Getting back to the Supreme Court, Yes, there's a clear conservative majority on the court now. The swing vote seems to be more conservative than Justice Kennedy was, but now the swing vote becomes John Roberts. With the heartbeat bill goes quite a bit farther down the road towards nullifying Roe versus Wade than anything we've had in the past. And people have said Roberts may not be willing to go that far right away. Are you still in the same position where the heartbeat bill might be just too extreme and not the nibbling, which is what's been your strategy?
We believe in the incremental approach. See, we're not asking the United States Supreme Court to serve as doctors and set the new litmus test because the one in 73 said viability. What we're saying is that viability should not be the standard, so let's eliminate Roe and let each state decide. If New York wants to allow women to abort their little baby girl the second before she's born, that's New York's decision. In Ohio, if we want to do save babies at heartbeat, that's our decision. Overturning Roe v. Wade does not make abortion illegal. It just brings it back to the states to set their own policy.
Just to your point, under the heartbeat bill, abortions would be banned roughly at about 6 weeks into pregnancy, and the current law, I think, is at 20.
And many women don't know they're pregnant until after 6 weeks.
Actually, the bill is passed by the legislature. It's 10 weeks, so it's not 6 weeks.
Does it
It's 10
specify 10 weeks?
Yes, because it's abdominal ultrasounds.
Just 1.3% of abortions in this country take place after 21 weeks of pregnancy. So this whole partial birth abortion thing, late-term abortion that Mike keeps wanting to talk about is a total red herring. And again, I will say, the heartbeat bill is not about late-term abortion. It's about prohibiting all abortion after 6 weeks or 12, depending on what it is. But the point is, there's no exceptions for rape or incest, Mike.
All right,
and that's not where Ohioans are.
Maybe paying for roads and bridges can bring lawmakers and Ohioans together. The state is running out of money for new highway projects. It needs to find a way to pay for future transportation projects. To aid in the search, Governor DeWine has put together a committee. It features people from the energy industries, local governments, labor unions, trucking and car companies. Noticeably absent from the committee, anyone from public transportation. Jackie Borchert, is this just symbolic of where public transit stands in the potpourri of transportation options in Ohio?
I think more than symbolic. I think it's totally telling. You know, and Mike DeWine was asked about this week, and his response to why there's no public transportation is this group is going to be really focused on how to deal with the road and highway funding problem in Ohio. Our gas tax can only be used for those projects. It can't go toward improving public transportation in cities or elsewhere. So that's the issue that they're facing. It's an immediate concern. It's something that he wants them to really focus on in just a couple of weeks. And so that was, when we asked him, well, why no public transportation? When will they be able to weigh in on this? And his response was, well, they can come and testify on the bill.
So couldn't they change the law, though, to allow some of the gas tax money to go towards, buses and light rail? I mean, they could, couldn't they? Or they don't want to, probably.
I mean, I'm sure they could.
Yeah.
That's a really big lift, I think, to ask before in this transportation budget. It's got to be, out by the end of March, and we're here in the first week of February. So I think already it's a big lift. I think that this committee, they were recognizing that that's the most pressing issue, and so that's why we want to have those people on there. But certainly, public transit advocates are not happy about this decision. I don't think they're going to let Governor DeWine forget it.
Should we raise the gas tax, Mike?
No, absolutely not. If we want to have an economy that goes backwards, you raise taxes. Look, at the end of the day, this Blue Ribbon Committee, they've got, I think, 14 days to come up with a recommendation. We know what it's going to be, raise the gas tax.
How do you pay for the roads if you don't raise the gas tax?
That's something the legislature is going to have to figure out. If they want to take it to the vote of the people, that's fine. But I can tell you right now, doing an unscientific straw poll, there's at least 20 senators that refuse to vote to increase the gas tax. I think the first question is, why do we have $1 billion shortfall, when changing administrations? That's the biggest issue we have. Look, at the end of the day, we can continue down a smart road. We got to fix our bridges if there's issues. We do have money to do that, but raising the gas tax right now, it's not a good idea.
Yeah, so it's true, we haven't raised the gas tax here in 14 years, but the reason we don't have enough money to fix our roads and bridges is the same reason we don't have enough money for our schools or our local governments, and that is since 2005, the Republicans who have run this state have enacted a series of tax cuts most of whose benefits have gone to the top 2% in this state, and that now cost us $6 billion a year in revenue. So before we talk about raising the gas tax, which is going to hurt working people a lot more than the wealthy, how about we talk about rolling back some of those tax cuts that mostly go to the wealthy and ask the richer folks in this state to start paying their fair share of taxes?
All right. We'll have to leave it there. Off the record, parting shots. Mike Gonadakis, you're up first.
It's been almost a month now. We gave Zach Klein, Advocates for Responsible Taxation, the organization for which I'm a part of, our petition language, and he has been silent crickets out of the city attorney's office. Hurry up, Zach. Do your job. Approve this. We need to get collecting signatures.
This is the effort to overturn the ticket tax.
The 5% ticket tax.
House and Senate negotiators will not agree to fund Trump's border wall, but that does not mean there will be another government shutdown. Instead, the president is going to declare a national emergency and try to grab money that Congress has appropriated for other reasons to fund his wall, which the courts will ultimately strike down. So the bottom line is that Congress will appropriate billions more for border security, but Trump won't get a wall that polls show most Americans don't want and that Mexico will never pay for.
Kathy.
Governor Mike DeWine just took a big step in the direction of controlling drug costs by ordering that the Medicaid rebid their managed care contracts. This has been a big bone of contention, and I think his action is going to put Ohio at the forefront of this battle. Watch other states.
Jackie.
Mike DeWine, further proving he's a traditionalist, will hold his State of the State address in the House chamber on March 5th instead of taking it on the road as Governor Kasich did.
So the tradition returns.
Pleasing reporters in Columbus and lobbyists and lawmakers who are tired of driving to far-flung parts of the state in the cold.
Wasn't Marietta the last one?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a long way away. Super Bowl week, I only wear my Patriots tie once a year because I only wear it when they make it to the Super Bowl. So, Pats win and Tom Brady does not retire. Sorry, guys. That is Columbus on the Record for this week. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and you can see each episode on demand. You can watch it during halftime of the Super Bowl. Check it out at wosu.org/COTR. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.